Hello, I'm Natalie. We're coming to you from inside today. It's a little warm outside. The tomatoes have been a bit stressed over the past month, but they've been doing a pretty good job of providing us with some great produce this year. And so I want to give you just a little bit of an overview of the range of tomatoes that are coming out of our crops. You've seen a few clips growing up until now, but we want to show you some harvested fruit. We have some hybrid red beefsteaks that you'd probably be pretty familiar with. This is a big beef fruit, and this is Celebrity, so those are kind of some old faithful cultivars. We also have some determinate red beefsteaks, such as Defiant, such as Mountain Merit, that are much more disease resistant, especially the leaf diseases. So those we're trialing. We also have some of our favorite heirloom tomatoes. So this is, of course, a Brandywine. You can see the great size that can come off of a Brandywine, especially early in the season. They tend to decrease in later fruiting clusters. We also have some yellow fruited cultivar from the Lemon Boy, which you may be familiar with. Bright, vibrant lemon color, a little bit softer texture. We also have Chef's Choice Orange, which is a recent All-American Selections winner. You can see the deeper coloration in the fruit, and some new trial cultivars, which we don't actually even know the name of yet. So this is one of our All-American Selections yellow beefsteak trial cultivars that we'll see how well it does and whether it gets introduced to the market. We also have a whole range of smaller fruited cultivars, from some of the indigo cherries that you've probably seen before, to a lot of yellow fruited cultivars. Some of my favorites to eat so far have been the Sun Sugar. So this is similar. You might be familiar with the Sun Gold, but this has a little bit lower cracking. Orange Zinger is another one that I've been enjoying eating, and these are cherry bombs. So we also have some small red fruited cultivars. So we've kind of shown you some of the larger beefsteak tomatoes and some of the small cherry tomatoes, but there's a whole spectrum of fruit size in between. And we have a couple good examples here. These are actually Mountain Magic, which is an indeterminate cultivar that we call a Campari size. These are pretty common in greenhouse vegetables these days, so you may be seeing some of these in the grocery store, and often they're sold with the vine on. So you'd still see these still sold with a fruiting cluster. These are a cultivar that has good leaf disease resistance, like late blight and early blight, so they might be something for you to think about in your garden. Slightly larger fruit, Premio. It also would commonly be sold kind of as a cluster tomato, and it's definitely smaller than some of our most common beefsteaks. So that's just a little bit of the range of fruit that are currently coming off of our trial plots. So we've talked a little bit about the variety in cultivars. One thing that we haven't gone into a lot of detail yet is about the type of information that we're gathering on these tomato cultivars. So as we pick them, we're taking, of course, the date, we're taking the number of fruit that we harvest off of each plot, we're taking the total yield, we're grading them to determine how high the quality is, whether there's a lot of insect or disease damage. Those are all important production practices, which of course as a grower, we're all pretty interested in. But probably what you're thinking is, okay, they're beautiful, but what do they really taste like? So we're also taking data on sensory evaluations, and that's kind of a new part of our trial evaluations here in the gardens this year. Just this morning, we actually had a group of volunteers and gardeners who came in and tasted pieces of 27 different kinds of tomatoes. So we cut them up and gave them a very even size sample of each one of these different fruit. You can see just a few slices that are left over. Gave them each a random 3-digit number, so they had no idea what kind of tomato they were tasting, and they each filled out an evaluation that was based on characteristics such as appearance, texture, sweetness, acidity, whether there were any off flavors and those types of things. So in addition to the yield that we're getting from our field plots, we're also going to have some evaluations from normal Tennessee home gardeners and eaters like yourself of how they preferred or didn't prefer the taste of these many different cultivars in our trials. So we've talked about yield, we've talked about sensory evaluations. One of the other pieces of information that we're taking is what we call more of an instrumentation, right? An instrument method. So we are just taking a value as to what the soluble solids are in our tomato fruit. Most of tomatoes are water. Oftentimes 95% of a common beefsteak tomato might be water, but that 5% is made up of largely sugars, so amino acids and some of those other organic acids, but a lot of what's remaining other than the water is sugars. And so with a simple instrument called a refractometer, we can determine what the soluble solids level is, and that corresponds to sugars in our tomato fruit. Now, acidity comes into play. We can measure those, but some of the most basic and easy to measure methods are using a refractometer to take Brix, which is percent soluble solids. And it's a pretty simple system. We are just going to crush a fruit. The easy home garden handheld method is to use a garlic press, which will allow us to get an even sample of not just the seeds, not just the juice, but really the whole internal components of the tomato. So we'll give ourselves a nice sample, and then with the dropper, we'll want just the liquid portion, and we simply place the liquid portion on this glass pane right here, which is our sample area. We want to make sure we don't have too many bubbles. We just want a nice clear sample. And then the refractometer, all it's really doing is measuring how light is changed by our sample, right? So light comes through this crystal that's in here, and if there are a lot of soluble solids or a lot of sugars, then it changes the path of light more than if there aren't very many, as would occur in clear water. So clear water would be 0. A common range for beefsteak tomatoes might be 3 to 6% soluble solids. Some of our smaller fruit or cultivars might be 8, 10, or even above.